Hello, snowboarders of the internet. I'm your host, Avran LeFeber, and this is Top 5s, the only weekly Top 5 show in snowboarding that you tune into to find out which bindings are going to hold you down while you kiss your ass goodbye and point it down a 45-degree chute with only 3 inches of air. That's right, we're talking about the Top 5 2024-2025 Freeride Charger bindings. These are the stiffest of the stiff, the ones that are going to give you the most performance-based response. Number 5, the Nitro Phantom Plus. This will be the most damp binding on this list due to that air ride technology that they have. That's going to kill off any of that kinetic energy when you get in the wump bumps, chop, chunder, death cookies, whatever. You're not going to feel it. Now, the big thing with this binding is it does have a higher high back, which is really going to change that response when you drive back into it. It's going to be really on point. So even with very minimal forward lean or none, it's responsive. And the more you crank that forward lean, it's just going to intensify. The straps are solid, they hold you down well, the ratchets work well. The one thing that I do wish that this had was a bigger disc. I think with that mini disc, you get a little too much lateral play. With a bigger disc, you would forego that, but still, this binding is very responsive and yet very damp. Number 4, the bent metal solution. This is the stiffest binding that bent metal makes, and for good reason. I mean, they crank it up to 11. Their scale stops at 10 and they cranked it up to 11. Those numbers really don't mean shit, but they cranked it up to 11, and you feel that response underfoot. It's got a bit of a bigger disc. That chassis takes up a little more space, and that changes that response from toe to heel as well as laterally from nose to tail. The straps contour around the boot well, and they're just responsive enough that even when you're flexing into your boot, it doesn't cause it to have so much give that it pushes through it. It's not going to be the binding for everyone, and I do feel that some of the adjustments are a little lacking on it, but this is still a very responsive and stiff binding. Number 3, the Jones Apollo. With that skate tech technology that it's got, you get more power pushed down into your toe and your heel as it's pivoting. It changes that whole dynamic movement from toe to heel, and it just gives you more response on your edges. Also, with it having that skate tech chassis, this hinders lateral movement, making them more rigid. So you're gonna get more power into your turns off your front foot or off the tail if you shift your weight back. The straps, once again, very responsive. That high back, also responsive. Even with that slight little wing, you can push into it. Overall, stiffest binding that Jones makes, and it's a Freeride Charger for a reason. It just really lets you go fast and haul ass. Number 2, the Ride A10. This won't be the most damp binding on this list because it does have an aluminum chassis, so micro vibrations are gonna come up underfoot. You are gonna feel it, but it is the stiffest binding that Ride makes, and aluminum being more rigid does give you more power. The binding is beveled, so when you roll forward with your weight into the nose, you're gonna get a little bit more give. But then if you transition that weight kind of at an angle onto your toes, you're gonna feel that power driving down into it. The strap is very responsive on the heel and the toe. You do not have to worry about it. It's just gonna lock you in, and that high back is ultra stiff. With very minimal forward lean, you're gonna get a ton of response out of it. Now, is aluminum for everyone? Maybe not. If you want something a little more damp, that's why we have other options on this list. But if you don't care about your knees, ankles, and lower back, yeah, this is very rigid, and you're gonna feel a lot of chatter. So much chatter. We're like halfway through this video, and you know what you haven't done? You haven't gone down and given this a thumbs up. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, you should subscribe and click that bell. That way you're not missing any of the programming we've got coming out for you. Because we don't just make content, we make programming. Honorable mentions, all great options, but just barely didn't crack the top 5 of this list. The Bataleon Atom. Seriously, you guys put ASIM wrap on this binding? Bring back the full wrap. If it had full wrap, it would have made it higher on the list, would have given it more power. Still a very responsive binding. The straps are solid. It's got amazing dampening underfoot, but because it's missing that cutout on the outside, you lose some of that lateral power, and that's why it didn't crack the top 5. Mainly saying this for Bataleon. They they should make this full wrap, not ASIM wrap. The Salomon Quantum. Shadow fit is a little loose in the heel. Some people won't like that. Some people will. That's why we weren't able to have it crack it. You do get that play from the shadow fit, but this is a stiffer base underneath, and you notice that response toe to heel. The straps lock you in. That high back works in conjunction with everything. It just works. Unfortunately, even for being a Freeride charger binding, it's still just a hair too surfy. The Yes Airmaster XTRM. This would be the Yes version of the Jones Apollo with like a tweak to the high back and the straps. Still a very responsive binding. That skate tech works. It just drives that power down into your edge. You feel that. The straps are solid. They hold you down well, but they're a little lower than the Apollo high back, and you notice that you get more response from the Apollo. That's why we didn't put this into the top 5. Once again, these were all great options. They just barely didn't crack the top 5 of this list. Like what we're doing over here? Want to support us further? Swing on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP and become a member. Sure, I could tell you more here, but I got a video over there that explains it so much better. And the #1 Freeride charger binding is the Rome Cleaver. While not actually the stiffest binding on this list, I love that it has the full wrap chassis. So if you compare this to like the Bataleon Atom from the honorable mentions, which has the ASIM wrap, you're gonna get more power out of this. I think the heel strap could be a little bit beefier. That would also give it a little more power. The high back is very stiff and responsive. And the way the straps work, they contour over the boot and all the padding comes from the boot. So it's gonna flex in unison with it. You have a ton of adjustments on this as well, which is another key thing because you can really dial in your fit with this. One thing I would suggest, if you're not feeling the heel strap on this, rip the one either off the Atom or the Astro from Bataleon and put it on there, and you're gonna get more response. That's kind of the big difference between the two, that and the foot pad on there. So if you did want it to be more damp, you could pull the foot pad and put it on there because it's a little thicker. But by and large, this is a great binding with a ton of adjustments. That's why we put it on the list. We wanted you to just be able to dial in your customization and really get your fit secured for what you want so you can get the most performance from your binding. This has been our top 5 Freeride charger bindings for 2025. If these are too stiff for you, maybe you should go check out TC's list of the top 5 all-mountain Freeride bindings. They're a little more forgiving.